I'm Katie Wells, host of the Maximized Minimalist podcast. I escaped the hamster wheel of modern-day motherhood, overwhelmed by clutter and buried under the mental load. Now I live in a home that feels calm, manageable, and made for real life. I have margin in my days, energy for who matters most, and time for slow mornings and silly dance parties in the kitchen with my family. With over 5 million listens, the show has helped women around the world turn their homes into their happy place. Around here, we simplify for more peace, more presence, and more joy. We choose grace over guilt and progress over perfection. And we believe your home should give back more than it takes. I'm here to help you do the same. Come along with me and my guests as we share the real stories, habits, and strategies that help you lighten the load from the inside out. Pull up a seat, friend, and let's do this together. Ready, set, simplify. Jenny, welcome to the Maximized Minimalist Show. So excited to dive in about, really your expertise and how it aligns and impacts every single person on this planet, I feel like, in this day and age. So welcome. So excited to just extract so many gold nuggets from your brain. I can see, I know you've got them in there for us.
I'm so excited to meet you. I love what you are doing. And what year did you start doing your podcast?
2019.
So you would have saved my life. You would have saved my life if your podcast existed 10 years ago, because that's how I got everything that you were about is how I got into studying technology, because I lived in a very big house with 2 teenage kids, 4 companies, just name the way you could complicate. And of course, I was going to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to CrossFit. And, I was just like doing life. Had 2 houses, too many offices, just a lot going on. I had this day where I saw myself just Xing off the calendar. Like I was just getting through every day. And everything I was getting through was like the good stuff. Like, this is the good life. People would always tell me like, wow, you're living the dream. And I was like, is this really the dream? Because I am exhausted and I just want I want something to get to the end of something. And I was turning 40 and I had that, what am I getting to the end to? And I realized it was my kids leaving home. I was like holding my breath until they left home. And then I was going to like relax. I don't know. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, these are my last years. So at that point in time, I had 3 years left with my son living at home and 5 years left with my daughter. And I was like, I've missed something. Like, I have been going so fast. I have missed the joy of sharing my life with my kids. And so I quite dramatically was like, we're selling everything. We're moving out of this house. We got rid of everything. We moved into an apartment. I took a sabbatical from my job. So I was a marriage and family therapist working with a lot of trauma. So it was, it was like, it made sense why I was burned out and needed a break, And so did the whole thing, probably have a session on everything that I did over the course of about a year. It took me about a year just to be like, I'm done. I'm not living this crazy life anymore. I love my kids. I love my family. They're going to be gone and I can go back to all the insanity after they leave home. So for the first time in their life, I was a full-time stay-at-home mom at the very end, because I was like, I'm not missing this. And in that process, well, do you want to say something? Because now I'm already tired of hearing my voice.
I'm loving this.
Let's pause there for a moment.
It is transformational. I love the story, and I personally I love hearing it from everyone, because it impacts us in such different ways, and the journey starts for different reasons. And I love this. No, continue.
That's true. Well, I specialized in helping people recover from trauma and burnout. And so I knew all the things to do, which is why I proactively did this. I wasn't having a meltdown in a hospital, which was probably about a year away from happening if I didn't do this. And I realized I could not catch a break. I set all these boundaries with my phone. So my kids would leave for school and I'd put my phone away and have like a phone free 8 hours or whatever. And then I would get my phone back and be just immediately bombarded with the stuff. And I was like, how is this possible? I got rid of the house. I'm not working. How am I still suffering from so much anxiety and depression? And it was that kind that it was so subtle. it's just that subtle, like, why am I like this all the time? I listened to your podcast on resetting your nervous system, right? It was that kind of like, why can I not let down? Why can I not let down? 6 months into my sabbatical, I went to turn on my phone one morning and it wouldn't turn on. It wouldn't power on at all. And I was like, I felt like a kid who was calling, like had my mom call sick and I was going to amusement park that day. I felt so like, can I really do this? Can I just have my whole day with no phone? And for a month, I didn't get my phone fixed. Every day I was like, the world kept on spinning. Everyone says this isn't possible, but it was like on this secret vacation where my phone did not exist. I went on 3 different trips. I was the happiest I've ever been in my whole life, like connected to my childhood level of happiness. And I thought, well, this is the break I needed. This is the vacation I needed. And after about a month, it was like, okay, Jenny, you've got to get back to real life. And I had this specific moment where I went and got my phone fixed. And I was like, it's time to get back to real life and leave your fantasy world. As if being back on my phone was reality and leaving my reality was, and my reality as it was a fantasy. Like, that was my actual processing. So I got it fixed and immediately like that, the anxiety came back, the depression came back. It was just like, ugh.
The weight of it all.
Like, ugh. And we'll get more into the things I've learned since then. But so 4 months, I'm like, I guess this is life. I don't know what I thought I was going to get out of this sabbatical, but be a grown up. This is life, whatever. And a few months later, I had left my phone in my car. I went out to my car and it was stolen. And the second I realized it was stolen, I had the experience of like the Wizard of Oz. Like everything went in color and the birds started chirping and the sun started shining. And I was like, it was stolen, huh? And at that moment, that was the first moment I put together the power that my phone had. So I thought that was coincidental. That was just like a nice little break. But in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this device doing to me? Now that I've tasted what life is like without it versus what life is like with it, I'm not getting it back. Like once you've experienced that freedom, I don't know how I'm going to live without a phone, but I'm going to live without a phone. And for the next 4 years, I did not have a phone, no smartphone, no dumb phone. And during that time, I got this incredible perspective on my kids' relationship with their phones, on my clients' relationship with their phones. And all of a sudden I was like, you've got to be kidding. I'm not suffering the greatest trauma that any human being has ever suffered in the history of the world if you take away my phone. If you take away my phone, I have very normal problems and things that need dealing with. If you add my phone, I enter the infinite world of never enough, can't get enough, can't keep up. So hence my meeting with you.
I have so many things. Number one, and I just saw this on online not long ago, ironically online. So, sometimes we find gold nuggets online. That's fine. And you mentioned the childhood part. And I think as I get older, and like I'm tearing up thinking about this, and I'll read it to you and the listeners. Like, I feel like when you get older, your perspective kind of naturally changes. But I was also kind of born a 90-year-old woman. So I've always been like old at heart. But as I'm getting older, I'm 37 now, I'm like really nostalgic for my childhood. And I'm like, well, what is it? And I would think like, oh, running around in the cornfields barefoot, no responsibilities, no bills to pay, all those basic things I think a lot of us think of. And then I read this, I'll read it to you. The magic in your childhood wasn't because you were a child. It was because you were living in the present. So this is my little screensaver right now on my phone. And it's such a great reminder, like, this is what you're talking about. This is exactly one of the big things that our phones, which are just a part of our lives now, are taking away in these kind of like micro moments that add up. Number two, I want to share when my husband and I took a belated honeymoon 2 years after we got married. We had a business, so we couldn't take it right away. So when we did finally take it, it was that much sweeter. And this was back in 2023. So phones weren't like, or no, 2013.
It's like, wow, that's when time flies, doesn't it?
Regardless, I wasn't as on it as I am now, right?
But I remember thinking the email aspect I was using my phone for, and what if someone needs me? But we decided to put our phones away for that 7 days. We went to the Bahamas and this remote island called Cat Island, which is hilarious because I'm a cat person and people think, did you pick it because it was called Cat Island? No, it's because there's literally nothing to do. There's like no tourism. There's no anything. You just be. You don't see another living soul. That felt very appealing to us. And I remember, again, being so fully present. And after that 7 days, I opened up our suitcase to pack and I saw my phone and I got a similar feeling, like this feeling, like this heaviness, and I just burst into tears. I'm like, oh, now I have to go back to reality, right? But then number three, I also want to say, we hear this stuff, and a lot of my listeners are moms, we're busy. And when we hear other women like you go, well, I didn't have a phone. We're like, how? Because we immediately think of worst case scenario. What you have a couple kids. What if the school needs to contact you? What if there's a work emergency? And so for me, that's always kind of been like an underlying objection to this. But I really want to dive into this. So like you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, we're not addicted to our phones, but the feelings they give us, right? So what does that mean? What's your perspective on that? And how can someone start to break that emotional loop in our modern day age? Maybe they don't want to go full or don't have the capacity or ability right now to have their phone stolen and be glad about it.
They would be glad about it.
Yeah, I know. But what did that look like for you? And obviously coaching your clients through this as a health professional.
One of the things I'm realizing is how to start this conversation is realizing that you actually have a relationship with your phone, that realize it is absolutely not just a tool. It's barely a tool. It is barely a tool. It has a few tool aspects, but mostly it's a relationship. It's a connection. So if you go back to, but this happened, I watched this happen in my lifetime. It happened after September 11th. So before September 11th, it was a normal conversation. People were really reluctant toward having a cell phone. It was like, do I really want to be available 24/7? That was I want my life. I used to drop my kids off at preschool and put their dad's company's phone number down, and I left for the day. And they had an emergency contact to call him at the office, right? And my time off was my time off. And not only that, all the other things that could come through of I had this free time and now, this person needs this and this person needs that, right? But what happened at September 11th is that cell phones were the savior. They were the thing. If you had a cell phone, you found out whether your loved one survived. You maybe had a last conversation with a loved one. And that next day, which I cannot find this research anywhere, but I remember it being talked about during that time, the only stock that went up was cell phones. So it's September 12th and everyone was like, if I was on the fence today, I'm getting a phone. So if people could understand that as a culture, we adopted this relationship with our phones. And again, this was just a cell phone. This wasn't a smartphone during a time of fear and trauma. And we saw this as the answer. This is the thing connecting me to my loved one. Well, that is not true. We've now watched that play out over the last 20 years, and it has caused more conflict and pain and distance and isolation and loneliness than probably any other invention in history. So I think we have to start by acknowledging what you said is I have what we call in the therapy world an anxious attachment to this device because I am dependent on it for my well-being every moment. And I think my safety and the safety of everyone I love is literally in my hands. It's not. I've interviewed so many parents, moms in particular, and asked how many times have you been called in case of an emergency for your child? The answer is 0 over a lifetime. I fully raised my kids, never got the call, never whatever. Because if your child is in a real emergency, you should not be the first call. If there is, very rarely, if you're not physically there, you don't. If my kids are now adults, I don't want them calling me first if they're in a car accident. Call the people that can help you right this second, And just that carrying around that just that by itself, that is such a subtle and basic thing. But carrying around, if my cell phone is present, it's the same as watching an ambulance go off any minute. I'm already in a hypervigilant emergency state, just waiting for the emergency, right? Just that. And that's just tiny. So a lot of it is starting to see that as the relationship that needs, like, that's the relationship to go into therapy for. You know, you think about if you walked into your therapist's office and you had a security blanket like a 4-year-old, you'd be like, I have panic attacks every time I'm not with this blanket. You and your therapist would both be like, we should work on that, shouldn't we? Because being an adult is not having a prop. And that having the prop then creates an anxiety circle that validates itself. As long as I have this, I'm not anxious. But because I have this, I'm on the edge of anxiety.
I remember years ago when Steve Jobs was still alive, and he did a lot of public speaking, of course, promoting. I remember when the iPod came out, and I was like, oh, music in my pocket. I think that's how it was marketed. I'm like, yeah, I want that. I don't want a Discman anymore that skips when I'm on the school bus. And like, it was like the coolest thing. And then iPhones and iPads and like the more of the smart devices came out. And I remember it was probably an interview. It probably wasn't live on stage, right, to millions of people. But he was like, my kids don't use an iPad. My kids aren't actually allowed on these devices or something. And if that doesn't tell us something, that the creator of so much of this technology didn't let his kids use the technology, that should have been a red flag. But I totally get like what you're saying, like it's that fear-based and then anxious attachment. And I love that analogy of, the 4-year-old with a security blanket. I fully can relate to that. So you've coined the term or use the term media trauma. I want to talk about that because I know you also talk about signs that maybe we are experiencing media trauma and digital overload. So what does that look like? What are the signs to look for? I know like a lot of us, I think probably 99% of us can relate to the anxious attachment part of our phone, but like where's the media come in? Is that speaking to like socials or news or internet, all the things?
So okay, the definition of media trauma is basically trauma that you're actually experiencing the symptoms of trauma, but you don't have any named event. So you have the anxiety, you have the depression, you have the burnout, you have the quick to anger, you're not sleeping, all the PTSD symptoms, but there's no situation. So when I first started doing therapy, the first half of my practice, any client who had those kinds of symptoms had a specific presenting issue or situation that they would bring into my office. When somebody's healing from trauma, what they're really healing from is that your brain can't organize the information that it's being faced with. So if you've had, for example, like my grandfather passing away wasn't a trauma because that has a way of it makes sense. It has a place to organize. But I had a drive-by shooting happen at my house when my kids were little. And that was a trauma because there was no way for me to make sense. It took me, a while. So trauma is when the situation is so outside of your ability to organize it or make sense of it or find how you're supposed to respond to it. That's what trauma is. And when you're working on healing trauma, how all the ways that we have figured out that we can heal, you're actually repaving places in your brain. You're helping make new connections. You're making stories make sense and things fit into a sort of a linear story and they have meaning, right? And then that's no longer a trauma in your life. That's where we get post-traumatic growth from. We learn and we're thriving better after it. Well, that was my experience in the first half of my practice. I watched clients get better. They had a named thing. We worked through it. They healed from it. They graduated. They moved on. And then during all of this time that I was dealing with my own burnout, they weren't getting better anymore. And I had this huge influx of clients being like, something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong. Everybody says I need therapy. Let's get therapy. And I'm like, on what? What are we working on? What, life? So that's how I was like, this is no fun. Let me take a break and see get my own sense about me. So that's when I realized, and then I went through my own situation and only reflectively was like, oh my gosh, we are being traumatized by our media. oh my gosh, we think it's entertainment. We think it's productivity tools. We think it's our work, and it's actually traumatizing us. So the simplest example of this, I don't spend a lot of time on content because as you mentioned, you could find just as much positive content as negative content in the world. Like it's not like, oh, every single thing that's on the internet is bad, right? Because a lot of it is really good in its content. Right. However, in therapy, we're always talking about that it's really the process that matters. Like the process is where the actual problems lie. So imagine this specifically with Instagram stories, Reels, YouTube Shorts, certainly TikTok. You are getting these micro bits of information, right? These super, super light, almost like a stone skipping on the surface of water. It actually, that are unrelated stories.
Yes, sure. Mm-hmm.
So in a very short period of time, you are taking in, I don't know how many, I've never done like how many things you could see in a minute, but I'll do it like in workshops and then turn it off. And your brain is actually having to go through the same process it goes through during a traumatic event, just organizing those reels. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's like, here's my mind, here's my focus, here's how I'm going, here's how I see myself orienting and interacting with the world. And then I get these, let's say, 30 different pieces of information that have nothing to do with me or something to do with me, nothing to do with each other. And my brain it's like, it shatters it. It shatters it into these small pieces that it now has to spend energy organizing, which by itself activates my anxiety. Does that make sense? I mean, that is so, you wouldn't even think that was harmful. But if you're working on healing from any kind of trauma and organizing your brain, and then you walk out of my office and you do that, it's like working out 1 hour a week and then not moving the other, 100 and whatever hours. So I was watching it undo the good work that we were doing in my office. And that's how I came up with the concept.
Wow. So what is that? Like, what are some signs? I know you've mentioned, like, everyone I've talked to in my own world, I've experienced anxiety, like hopping. And it's, again, like, I think a lot of us are just like, oh, gonna check my messages. And then all of a sudden, like, boom, like your mind is just overtaken in that way. And that whole, like, how our brain isn't designed and wired to handle those micro bursts and like disorganization, which, we're just like, our brain is created, we crave order. This is why we crave simpler environments. So what I'm hearing is like the stories and the micro bits and like the fast pacedness of it all. And I've read this too in different studies. It's rewiring our brain, but I actually didn't realize like that post like Instagram anxiety was related necessarily to what you speak to. So it's so fascinating. And you mentioned you had depression kind of hit you after getting off Instagram or socials or the news. What other signs can we look for? Or are those kind of like, is it overwhelm and like, like maybe you're less, like you're more easily triggered because you're just like in a heightened awareness?
Yeah. The biggest sign would really be to turn off your phone and get it away from your body and out of sight and see how you're doing. Like what is my surroundings? Like, what does my environment look like? Who am I seeing? Like I was on the verge of talking about this before COVID came out, and everyone was just about to get it before COVID came out. Like it was a big release. Which is understanding that you live in two realities. You live in your real world reality, and then there's a digital reality. And they are two completely different cultures that require completely different things of you. And most of us don't know that. We don't see those as two separate things, but they are two very, very, very separate things. Like if I'm really hoping to go to Cuba soon. If I go to Cuba, I do not expect to live and function and operate the same way in Cuba as I do here. Learning that is the case for when you are in digital spaces, you have to equip yourself in your reality as much as possible, understand what it means to be regulated before you pick up your phone. That's got to be I know what I need, I know what I'm here to do, and then I pick it up.
Okay. So walk us through what that would look like for someone who wants to learn the ways of, okay, how do I focus and learn the culture in a sense of the digital world, because the reality is whether we take a 24-hour break or like, hey, put boundaries in place, it's still going to be there. We still need to learn, which we weren't taught, right? How to use this technological world. So tell me, like, what does that look like? So step one is like regulate your nervous system.
The first thing to do is to turn your screen black and white, your phone screen black and white. So after you do that, that takes a lot of, that almost immediately will help your nervous system because your eyes are just processing those candy colored lights, and that alone will calm your system down. So it's super easy, super quick fix. The second thing is to take social media off of your phone. Take any kind of time killer or entertainment or any what I call predatory media, take it off your phone. All of the research that came out about anxiety and depression and suicide rates and eating disorders and all of those did not happen when social media came out. It happened when social media turned into an app on your phone. So we are not finding you can do all the work you need to do. You can even check up on your few friends on a laptop or a different thing. It does not create the same level of anxiety as it does on your phone. So 1, 2, the way that my most addicted addict, who's actually was my student who said, Jenny, you've got to talk about media trauma. This is a really big deal. What we started with him, he was so addicted to social media and his phone, and it was destroying his life. His wife was just about to have a baby, and he was like, I'm about to lose everything, and I haven't even become a dad yet. And so we started with the first hour of his day there was no screen, nothing, but just him and his life for the first hour every day. And if he could do it, anybody could do it. Anybody could do it. And just for that hour, you get your own mind. You see, oh, this is what I have to do today. This is what I need to do today. And you start doing it. And then you are the one who puts yourself in charge. I like making a list of everything I need to do that is in my digital world during that time. So that when I am setting up my laptop, which I do almost all my digital work through my laptop, I know what I have to do there. I don't have any, I went on YouTube to find something the other day, and I was like, if I got on YouTube, I couldn't do anything else. I could not do anything else. I'm already overwhelmed with my life without those 20 videos on how I can improve my life, Are those practical?
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, I've done a lot of these. Not necessarily tried. I've done a lot of these. I put my phone in grayscale, and there is a way to do it so it does it automatically. So I set just for the listeners out there, Google it or Chat GPT if you use that for your particular phone, because I know there's different instructions for Android, iPhone, all that. But I automatically set it up to go grayscale at 5 o'clock. And I'm telling you, for years I had the gray, black, white, grayscale screen, background. But I never thought when you grayscale everything, it does that. So you can't see the colors of the blue Facebook or the orange and yellow and, pink Instagram. You can't see all that. That immediately made me feel more relaxed just looking at my phone. It is wild how our nervous system responds to grayscale. So you can set it up. If you are hey, I know I'm tempted at night. That was my biggest thing because I wasn't on in the morning. I cut that habit years ago. I used to immediately check email and Instagram first thing in the morning before I got out of bed. And I very quickly realized that was putting me in a horrible mood. So now at night was my trickiest part. So I set that up. It has made the biggest difference. It is just as effective as hiding my phone, which I used to do. Put it in the back of the drawer, right? So it's less available for you to just be oh, let me check. Because we're addicted to tapping. Oh, did anyone mess with me? Did I get any notification? So I just wanted to share that personally. That has been one of the biggest things. It's all of a sudden you don't crave it anymore. It's
like taking sugar out of your diet.
Yes.
It's very similar. Well, here's the other really magical thing it does. When you turn your phone on black and white, it communicates to yourself that that's not real. And all of a sudden, when you start only watching black and white, all of a sudden you start seeing colors in your life again. And so it starts translating, oh, this is real life. This is pretend. This is real life. This is pretend. But the way that our eyes have gotten messed with the colors through screens, we actually are not seeing, our real life looks dull. In contrast, we're not seeing colors the same way. And it is such a magical, fun experience to go grayscale and all of a sudden, you'll be like, how did I've never seen those flowers? Is that the most gorgeous painting I've ever seen in my whole life? Because it, brightens in contrast. So it's a really helpful way to let you know that pretty much everything that happens online isn't real. It's not real. It doesn't mean that somebody's not telling the truth. It's just not the whole picture, right? And yet we are organizing ourselves in such a way as if that is real. And the reality is we will never have enough. We will never buy enough. We can never be enough for what that world is requiring of us. It's an infinite world and we're finite.
So I'm going back to Katie. So I've got 2 kids. They are, as I record this, 8 and 10. My youngest is turning 9 soon. But when they were 2 kids under 2, my life was so overwhelmed pretty much from every single aspect, right? Relationships, work, motherhood, identity, clutter. And so I quickly started to use my phone to cope, right? I'm overwhelmed. I'm touched out. I'm tired of nursing 30 hours a week. Like those moments to me while I was on my phone felt like peace back then. But then they became something else over time with different apps, social media, like all the different things. We talked about how all that's changed so much in 5-10 years. So for the mom who's like I was, just completely burned out and might recognize, yeah, I don't feel great after I get off Instagram or after I get off my phone, but that moment is like, it almost became my me time. And during that me time, I was like buying copious amounts of things, doing lots of other, it was causing a lot of havoc that I didn't realize, because at the moment it felt like I could breathe. Okay, this moment's for me. I can turn my mind off, all these things, right? So let's talk to the mom from that perspective who like wants to work through this.
Yeah, I think that it is an issue for everyone, which is that downtime is screen time. Downtime is veg time, right? And however, the consequences in a mom's life are much more significant, right? Like, so in our minds, we think, like you said, that when we're getting on our phones, we're getting on social media, we're relaxing. That's not how it translates to our body. It's just another way that we're stressing ourselves out. So then when you get off, you have all of those feelings you had that you were escaping. And now you've layered on top of it all of the things I just told you about. And you get off of it more irritated and with less resources for handling the things that you need to do that you were avoiding, right? That you were getting out of. So the most common one is, people will say like the kids finally went to bed and now I'm just going to scroll until I go to sleep because I don't have to worry about anybody else or whatever. Well, I'm like, go to sleep, just go to bed early. Like absolutely anything. If you were to lay in bed and stare at your ceiling for an hour or 2 hours, the healing that your mind would do, the organizing, the regulating that would happen would make you sleep better and wake up the next day with like oh, this is a good life. Oh, I have a magical child in my life today that won't be there forever. Being a mom is so hard. It is so hard and it is so demanding. And it requires us to not detach. The reason that being a mom is so hard and that people keep saying that is because you don't get to do that. You don't get to just leave. Everything that you are doing for yourself, you are doing for your kids. Everything you do to yourself, you're doing to your kids. But mostly it's that the job of a mom has become completely and totally overwhelming and exhausting, because if you have your phone in your hand and you're trying to manage that at the same time you're trying to manage taking care of kids, you're going to lose your mind. You can't do that. I don't even have kids at home anymore, and I can't do that. I can't even manage my own life in my own house if I have my phone in my hand, right? Because it requires everything whenever I get on it. It requires all of me. So I think we have to somehow reconnect to your job is so hard that when you're not taking care of your kid, you have to be doing something that actually takes care of you. That's the only way you're going to have what you need to do this really hard job the next day. And there's certainly room for vegging out in that. There's certainly room for that. But how much more relaxing would it be to read a novel or watch a movie? It's not like it has to be meditating for an hour. Just do the thing that actually gives you joy and gives you connection and gives you rest. And you will have the resources you need to do this really hard job of parenting.
That is so true. Actually, I had to call myself out about a year ago because I was really like, all of a sudden I felt this pressure to like have readers. Like I wanted my kids to be readers. I read for enjoyment growing up, and that is just something I've always wanted them to do. And they were, but not to what I wanted them to be, like more readers. So I'd be like, okay, from this time to this time on the weekends when you're home from school is reading time. And they probably part of my attitude about it, but they were like pushing back. I'm like, why can't you just enjoy reading? And and I very quickly realized, like, when they did start reading, guess what I did? I got on my phone. So of course, when you compare and they don't have phones, they're like, what, you read? And I'm like, oh, I'm reading on my phone. And then I was like, hold on, Katie. Like, I actually used to get so much enjoyment from reading, but now I'm like, I'm too busy, right? So I was like, okay, reading time, we're doing this as a family. So I also started reading, and guess what? They were like, it's become like this really amazing, like connective time, even though we're not even speaking to one another. We're just doing something together that is so counterculture at this point. And then, months later, I read like, your kids have a 40% higher chance of reading for enjoyment if one of the parents, if they see consistently their parents do that. Well, my mom did that growing up. My dad read the newspaper. My mom was constantly reading books. That makes sense why I love reading. And I want to pass that along to my kids. And again, like the modeling wasn't there. I was just like, you need to be a reader because I said so. And it really shifted. Not only that, like they are becoming readers for enjoyment, which good for them. And if they weren't, even if I were modeling and doing this family time, who cares? Because that time is honestly so precious to me. It's insane. And that is exactly what my phone was taking away. And I didn't even realize it. I was just like, oh, okay, great. I get to turn my brain off, or, however we frame it. But what I really want, that's what you're getting at. What we really are, our true desire. I just want to do something with my kids and connect. And maybe it doesn't demand me playing soccer outside, and something physical,
Well, first of all, I do feel like I am a little bit harder on moms than the average person. And I want to be very clear that I was that mom. Like I am speaking that from a place of, from the time I was the first smartphone mom. So I was the first generation of moms that had smartphones, and my kids lost their mom, right? Like I was the mom before a phone existed where you'd wait in line at the post office for an hour and the whole time be like playing I Spy, trying to get them sing a song because you're just trying to survive. So I'm trying to survive, but they think they have this amazing mom who's just trying to keep them quiet and sane. I had toys in my bags, right? We had projects. If we went over to a friend's house, then I brought these toys or what, like that was what was required to parent. And like that, they lost me. Like in line at the post office, I was going to be on my phone getting something done or taking a picture of my children to post about our time in line at the post office and tell the little story of that. So I was very, very early in on Facebook and Instagram. The company that we owned was a YouTube and Facebook and Instagram connected company. Like I was very, very involved in this. And my kids, like if you ever heard, my first podcast is an interview with my kids, which I would love for you to hear because it tells the story of a life of a mom addicted to a phone and then one that doesn't have one. And I mean, my daughter stopped, like, you can never take another picture of me. Like my daughter was really angry at me for only paying attention to her when there was something I could capture and share. And so I was that mom. What I'm saying is I'm speaking from a place of I have done it. I escaped. I always was the mom who had a book or was writing on something. What we now realize is that phones, we leave our bodies. We're not actually there. When you have a book, you're still there. So that's what kids love. Kids love moms who are busy doing something else, but available and accessible anytime that they need them. But they don't want your parents' full attention, and they certainly don't want you to disappear, right?
Yeah.
And just what I got back in those last few years with my kids at home, that's what I want every mom to have. That's what I want every mom to have. I want them to not only have the joy of those moments with their kids, but also what you learn, like what you get. For example, when you help a baby get through, self-soothing, you're self-soothing yourself at the same time because it's very stressful, but you've just given yourself the resource you need to get through the terrible twos. And so the more we delay not dealing with the issue with our kids, the less equipped we are to deal with the next harder issue that they're about. You're in a class on humans when you're a mom. And if you don't learn the lessons, the next lesson gets harder and harder and harder. And then you have to escape it, right? Like, oh my gosh, this is too much. I'm overwhelmed.
So it builds that scaffolding and that resiliency and that like capacity to be able to do those things. So what does your own media look like these days? Or maybe, obviously you still coach a lot of your clients through detoxing from media. Just because I know I have so many moms right now who are like, kids still at home like me. What's like a 5-step plan for getting started? And for someone who maybe doesn't want to do the full 24 hours or go cold turkey or sabbatical and all that, what does that look like? And how can we keep it going past that 24 hours, right? What does that look like?
Yeah. So one thing is that it is a process like anything else. I don't honestly know anyone who could do it by themselves. It's harder than anything else I've ever done in my life. I do have like a step-by-step process, like broken down to the simplest steps possible on my website. But one of the things is if you're specifically talking to moms, when your kids are around, your phone shouldn't be. And that is still my policy with my kids today. Like if they come visit, there's no reason for my phone to be around. That any emergency that I need cannot possibly compare to the presence of giving it to your kids at that moment. There's also a billion other things to do. You're not going to be bored, but just have that thought. Like if I see moms all the time, right? They're juggling their phone in their hand, crossing the street, holding kids, trying to buy groceries, whatever. You can't do it. You cannot do it. Like just a snapshot of that is like, that's the impossible. No wonder you have to escape it because you're trying to do the impossible every day. Put your phone away. It's still really, 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 really hard, but it's possible. You have the resources you need.
What I'm hearing is come up with a firm boundary to test out for a week or two. For me, that was initially no phone in the morning. And then it became kind of phase 2 was, okay, now I'm noticing too much. I need to be paying with my kids, helping them with homework, but I'm like juggling. I was that woman like making dinner. I got to respond to this email right now. Like, and guess what? My business is still okay because I stopped responding to emails after 6 or 5,
But also moms are the queens of juggling. We are the queens. We're always juggling so much at the same time. To throw the infinite world of the internet on top of that means to just shove your head underwater and drown you. It's just simply too much. But back to what you were saying about the process, you said how to start. And I do. I have a whole system for doing that. It's there for you. It's there for you. It starts with grayscaling. So it's kind of like change your life in a minute, change your life in an hour, change your life in a day. And it keeps going from there. The thing that I really want people to understand is when you first start setting boundaries with your phone, you really don't like your reality. In the beginning, your reality has been neglected, and so have your emotions.
Yep. I was grumpy. I'm like, this doesn't feel good.
Yeah, because you haven't been there. You haven't been there in your real life to let those emotions process through, to fix the things that need to be fixed in your life, or not fixed, tended to. They're required, So it's sort of like when your child is, you're on your phone, you're distracted, and your kid's like, Mom, Mom, Mom. And they're fine at the beginning. Hey, Mom. But then by like 10th, 20th time, they're having this full on temper tantrum spiral. And then you're snapped out of it. And you're like, what's your problem?
You've been there.
And that's us. That's us. We do the same thing. So when we get on our phone, and it's just a very unique addiction because it actually changes the place we are in our brain. We can leave our problems for a little bit in a way that even drugs cannot give us that same experience. And so when we've done that, we've just simply put off our body and our reality saying, Katie, Jenny, Katie, Jenny, Katie, Jenny. And finally, it's something so like, oh, I've got to tend to this immediately. So I feel like I wanted a simpler answer for you. You were talking about how to start. It's simply a matter of understanding the difference between predatory media and ethical media. And every single person will say, well, we can't live without our phone. That's all we don't have choices. We have to figure out how to do this. I could probably bet you 90% of what almost everyone does on their phone is predatory and toxic. And it's not helpful. It's not helping their life. It's not helping them in any way. It is actually harmful. We have this 10% of useful things that we're doing in it that we use to justify that, and that the programmers use to justify it. So at this time, I almost do everything on laptop. I do have a smartphone, but it only texts and calls on that smartphone. So I still have the option of maps. I still have, Spotify. Like, I still have ways I can use it. I can call on my car to talk to people when I'm driving.
Using the tools like it was initially created for. Here's some helpful tools in your pocket for when you need them. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. But there's nothing entertaining on my phone. And even with that, it had been so long since I didn't have a phone at all. I slowly had an iPad that just connected to Wi-Fi. And then eventually I did dumb phones for a long time. And then I was like, I'm going to try to make my smartphone a dumb phone. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm not happy with it at all because I have experienced life without it. It is just texts and phone calls. And even just the functionality of apps, which I think are such a joke, is so stressful to me that I still, even with my phone being a dumb phone, will still spend entire days. I leave it at home. I go out and work with my journal and my books. And it's still, as simplified as it is, it's still 24/7 access to me and my access to anything else I would like to do or get, in that moment.
This reminds me, so one thing I experienced related to decluttering my physical environment and simplifying and making progress, when I started to do that and immediately felt the physiological response, oh, I feel better. I feel less stressed. I feel less triggered. Oh my gosh, like I can pay attention to the kids. I can feel gratitude. It really, clutter was squashing my capacity to live in my world. And it really wasn't until I started to make progress that I was like, dang, this was really impacting me. And this is what I'm hearing you say, right? Like, we're also afraid to simplify our phone time because it's like this fear-based thing. But when you start to make these little changes, like put on grayscale, 100%, great thing to do. It takes like a minute. And you immediately are going to feel better. You're like, oh, I can see how this can become my new norm. And I crave more of that. And when I get on Instagram a week from now, when my whatever Saturdays or Instagram time or whatever boundary or rule you create for yourself, you're going to feel like probably not so great after. Like, you're going to notice it more. You're going to tap into it more because we have the capacity to do that. And I think that is when it's like you have to, like, your body knows, like your nervous system knows when something is helping you or not helping you. And I think it's just when our capacity for living grows and keying into our guts, that is really it's like our North Star. We have to pay attention to that.
You're exactly right. When you look at the advice and like the way that everything the internet has to say about how you're supposed to raise kids, what your kids need, what you should be doing, there's a lot of focus on how is a mom doing? Am I doing everything I'm supposed to be doing as a mom? And there are billions of ways you could be doing it better, because sadly, deep sadly for all of us, is that you guys had kids in a time when now you were starting to, it's how your kids were doing for other people. How your kids, what does it say about you? Now all of a sudden parenting switches to what does it say about you, as opposed to, are your kids getting what they need? And the only people on the planet who can let you know if they're getting what they need is your kids. And if you are constantly looking out here to try to find the answers, you're never going to find it. You're going to be just guessing. Is this what my kid needs? Is this what my kid needs? But really what the media is programming us with is, am I a good mom? Am I a good mom? Am I a good mom? Like, who cares? Like, do your kids have what they need? That is the definition of a good mom. And they will tell you, they are telling you what they need. And when the heartbreak of iPad parenting is that is parents making their job so much harder than it originally was. When you tend to your kids' needs, not their wants, but what they need, I'm not saying that will make every kid the easiest kid in the whole world, but parenting becomes so much easier because that's actually all parenting is getting your kids' need met. And then they're like I don't know if you've heard any of the stories of kids or teenagers who get rid of their technology. The research is showing 36 hours and you have a different child. 36 hours with no screens and a different child. And that could be a really hard 36 hours, but it's just too much, for all of us.
Okay, so you've got some tips on your website, which I'll be checking out. And you also have a new book out on Amazon. So please share that and congratulations.
Thank you. So very early on in my screen-free life, I was getting my sleep schedule back on track. And that meant I was awake at between 2 and 3 every single morning, which is a fascinating part of resetting your nervous system. And I was sitting in my living room, not on a screen, not sure what to do, like made some tea. And I was like, what if I was just stuck? What if this is all that I had in the whole world? Have I really enjoyed and appreciated everything that's in my living room? And I found this book called Practical Psychology that I was using as a decoration. And I was like, wonder if this really is practical psychology. I started reading it, had the most magical experience with the pencil markings in the book. So I was reading what the reader was like circling and asking. And this book was from 1946. I can't even tell you. I was like in some sort of like sweet dream, like reading all of these psychology concepts from 1946. And then halfway through the book, I realized it was my grandfather's textbook and it was his notes that were in the margin. And I was having this little interaction with him. And in it, I came across the 7 principles of mental hygiene. So it was the end of World War II and the beginning of technology in the home and in the workplace. And they were saying, hey, these are the things we need to do to stay mentally healthy through this, recovering from this trauma and through this change. And these 7 things became like, I thought it was going to be like funny, old psychology. And I was like, these are like better than anything I learned in school. So I've written a book called Vintage Therapy, and I take those 7 traits and each chapter goes through why these are important ways that we can take care of our minds. And then I have little questions at the end that basically help you, like little therapy sessions at the end that help you make sure that that thing is being taken care of in your life. So the idea is basically to shift from letting your phone lead your life to letting your needs lead your life. And then you will know exactly how to use the technology that you have, right? Because it's now serving your needs and you're not serving it. So anyway, it's free for download on my Substack, mediatalks.substack.com. And then later this month, it'll be available in print on Amazon.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to read that. So first of all, how it came to be is like, no wonder you were in that year. You're like, this is eerily familiar. And it's Grandpa's handwriting. And
it was
how
so special.
How you went into it thinking, this is going to be kind of a comical read. And you're like, actually, these are principles that remain true to this day. And we need them now more than ever because, gosh, 80 years later, wow, so good. I cannot wait to download that. We got to have you back. We got to have you back for round 2 sometime in next year, 2026. I have so many more questions, but we got to go.
Yeah. And I'm so excited to have you on my podcast early in the year. Thank you. What a pleasure, Katie. What an absolute pleasure.
Jenny, thanks for coming on the show and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thank you.